Happy Saturday, February the 20th, 2021, everyone. Good for some, not for others. Texas had it pretty hard. I heard Oregon got nailed with a bit of power outages too, but of course Texas took it the worst. So we're going to go through some things that are being talked about and said by all of these talking heads and unpack them to the best of my ability with what I think I know. So let's have a looky-loo here and start this up.
Everyone, I'm Andy Serwer, and welcome to a Yahoo Finance special, Climate Crisis. I'm joined now by Bill Gates, co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, former CEO of Microsoft, and author of the new book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster.
Which is really interesting that, he's got a book out to go lockstep with this right away. And then, of course, Klaus Schwab had COVID-19 and the Great Reset. And, of course, anybody who's paying attention knows that these things are linked up, right? So,
Bill, welcome.
Great to be with you.
So I want to start off by asking you about the weather. And right now, the U.S. is experiencing a massive, highly unusual...
I'm not sure why he'd laugh. People have died anyway.
Deep freeze. Is this due to climate change, do you think?
Well, these events become more likely because of climate change, because the normal wind patterns are broken down, and so a cold front can go further south more often than we would expect. So yeah,
without a model, I don't even know what he's talking about. I mean, we had a cold snap up here. Could it make it all the way down there without affecting everyone else? Well, I mostly heard about Texas and not anywhere else in between Canada and Texas from our cold snap affecting them. As far as weather patterns being broken, like he was talking about, well, that's man-made because we do seed clouds with dry ice to get rain to fall before it turns into hail somewhere else and destroys crops, right? So it's a lot of trying to manage our own solutions for problems.
The extreme events are coming more often and with more force, including hurricanes, than before we started warming the Earth.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. Where's the good records for the last 2,000 years on weather anomalies around the planet? Probably a lot of things that happened that were an oral tradition and then were just completely lost. Who knows? And then there are some veritable things that you can go and find and see that there were other crazy weather events before all this anyway. Also, since the Industrial Revolution, the warming that was put on happened between roughly 1900 or a little bit earlier and 1950. We put on a degree. We haven't put on any more since then, even though we're constantly using CO2 with a much higher population. You'd think you'd see a change, but you still haven't. Part of the reason for that is why I believe is because Professor William Happer, used to build CO2 lasers in the 70s. He used to be on these climate models in the early days trying to figure all this out, weather destruction of mankind. And he got out of it because he didn't believe it anymore. The weather models were never working out the way they should. It was gerrymandered the way they wanted it to be, and he left. But he states in his studies that CO2 requires exponential volume to put on temperature from the friction of the molecules. So at 400 parts per million right now, where we're roughly at between 4 and 450, we somehow put on a degree from when it started. But now, again, it would have to go somewhere between 800 and 900 parts per million to gain another degree. We're never going to see that in our lifetimes or anyone's lifetime again, probably, to get that much back up, considering how much CO2 we've already put off, and we're only at 450. Getting up to 8 seems really unlikely. And then from there to gain another degree, you'd have to get up to 1,600 parts per million, which, again, is even more unlikely, especially with all the ways that we're using to combat it. So a lot of the shit they say doesn't make sense. It doesn't line up with what's actually happened in history. They're lying. Once again, it's trying to get you off of oil and gas, probably because it's finite. Why would they do that? Maybe because they don't want to mess with the market too much with the finite resource going on. I mean, they already do, but maybe they don't want to take it to a crazier place. I don't know. It shouldn't have to be that hard to get people on different energy. You just have to show us something that works.
This recent storm has caused massive power outages in Texas, and the state's governor, Greg Abbott, blamed frozen wind turbines and said it shows the Green New Deal would, quote, be a deadly deal for the United States. How would you respond to that, Bill?
Well, in terms of the current situation, he's actually wrong. The wind turbines you can make sure they can deal with the cold. Probably.
Now, he takes current situation and then he redirects it to something that can be done. No, Billy. The current situation, is that right now Texas's shit wasn't set up for colder temperatures, and it probably did freeze, and it caused a glitch in the system that led to all this. At least that's one possibility. We'll go on a little bit more. I've got quite a few things to unpack. I don't want to yak too much. I know I try to be interesting, but I know short attention spans, right?
It wasn't anticipated for the wind turbines that far south, but the ones up in Iowa and North Dakota do have the ability to not freeze up.
So they're playing just tug of war with the information. I mean, they're both right and wrong at the same time, but of course they have agendas with their politics and their energy choice, so yada yada, we get the bullshit.
Actually, the main capacity that's gone out in Texas is not the wind. It's actually some of the natural gas plants that were also not ready for these super cold temperatures. So even though, viewing this as an attack on renewable energy is, in this case, is wrong.
Now, I don't know what a Texas well is like. I don't know what their hydrate possibilities are, how much fluid comes up with the gas. I don't know. So you could end up with freezes in a manifold system like what you've seen there. There's all kinds of places all over it where you could plug some methanol into and unfreeze it for sure, but if it's not set up in the first place, it's not ready. Something like that in Canada, if you've seen an outcropping from the ground of some system like that, it'd be insulated and there'd probably be a pump on it keeping things from freezing up in the first place. So that's something they don't address in any of this, is that they could just beef up their oil platforms so that they could handle the cold. But of course they don't want you going that way, so they don't mention that.
In fact, the point he's making, which is that as you rely more and more on wind and solar, that reliability will be a challenge. And you'll need three things to maintain reliability while driving renewables over 80%. One is more transmission. So we have an open source model. We're going to show that if Texas had slightly more in a connection, they wouldn't have had a problem. The second is energy storage. Still hard to store these amounts of energy. And finally, sources of energy that aren't weather dependent but are green, like nuclear.
So he's cool with that. I'm down with the nuclear idea. Talking about open source, so that's one of the great reset things, if you look into it, is they want to have the whole world connected by all of these green types of energy. Even nuclear is considered green because it doesn't produce CO2, right? So, and then that's one of the things they highlight in this too, is that Texas is isolated from power needs from other places. So if it only could have borrowed power from somewhere else, instead of just making the system that it has better, right? And he's right about nuclear, though. To me, that's the main focus. They shouldn't even be pissing around with these windmills, these wind farms that kill birds and bats and everything else. These guys are supposed to be caring about the planet, but they don't care about, vital parts of the food chain and the ecosystem like that. So you have to know that they don't actually care about the environment. They just care about their agenda of getting everybody off oil, and so they're happy to use every bit of propaganda they can to make that happen. We'll go through this quickly. I think we've already talked about most of this, honestly, anyway. I highlighted stuff, but most of it came out in the video we just watched. He's right. I mean, you can make stuff better in the cold. I know people who've gone and installed wind turbines here in Alberta and BC in the far north, and that stuff's working just fine up in the mountains. So it's true, it does work, and it can work in cold. It just wasn't ready to down there. So they have to fix that. The other thing they have to fix up is maybe just making those above ground oil systems able to handle the cold. All they have to do is get out there and insulate it and throw a methanol pump on it. Anyway, speaking with Yahoo Finance, Gates said climate change brings an immense economic shift, but also a problem of persuasion. So to me, that's what a lot of this shit that just happened in Texas is. It's your persuading moment. It's probably a false flag weather event, in my opinion, because they can't give you a straight answer on why that shit went down. Even for the gas plants to go down. Why? Was it because they were relying on electricity from the wind and that caused an upset in their system? I don't know. That's the thing, is we're listening to these experts here and there, but none of them are giving us an actual detailed smoking gun response. Anyway, giving people a direct experience of the wildfires or that sea level rise and then helping them extrapolate that, he says, is a communications challenge. Giving people a direct experience with the wildfires. Some people think that those fires were set on purpose. Is that giving people an experience with it? I would say that it is. Now, you can construe that however you want because of the English language, but I find it's weird the way he words things sometimes. Now, of course, the political aspect, you have mud being thrown on either side of the line. Crenshaw is blaming it on the wind turbines, which you could probably very well be right. With that element of their power grid shutting down, it may have caused shutdowns to everything else too. However, scientists and energy experts quickly moved to debunk the claims, say they're false. Texas is a gas state, says Mike Weber, an energy resources professor at the University of Texas in Austin, told the Texas Tribune. The newspaper reports that 80% of the state's power runs on natural gas. Well, that doesn't matter. And to me, it's like all these things probably should have been able to work still, even through this cold. But if they weren't able to, it's something you could fix for a lot less money than all the other stuff they're talking about doing. So, at any rate, the electric reliability, blah, 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 provides electricity 90% of the state. It says Texas is also the only U.S. state with its own separate power grid, as I said before. So that's what they want to do. They want to get everybody hooked up together. Globalist, globalist, globalist. No independence for Texas. You have to be part of everybody else or you get power outages, bud. Anyway, to sum it all up, gas is failing in the most spectacular fashion right now, Weber says. That's not true. It's not gas failing. It's the systems that were delivering it. Propaganda out the ass. You're an expert. You're an expert. Not even an expert at lying, Weber. Go get another job. Anyway. This person's going to get another job too. AOC, who introduced the climate proposal to Congress in February 2019, responded to Abbott's claim Wednesday. The infrastructure failures in Texas are quite literally what happens when you don't pursue a Green New Deal, she tweeted. She can tweet right off. All that stuff could run right if it was done better. It just needs to be upgraded for the cold, if that is even the case. Anyway. 2.6 million homes in Texas still without power. I don't know how many are back online now. This article's a few days old. I wanted to get this out sooner. I was ready to do it, and then I had a 80-year-old birthday to go to, and yes, I went. Haha. No one got sick. Fuck you. Anyway, and it was a good day, but now here I am doing this a little bit late. But it's a good way to finish off the week, and then I have a movie I'll pick out for everyone tonight. Hopefully they'll watch, too, from some of these old treasure trove videos I've found. Of course, the power uppage in price went from $22 roughly a megawatt hour to $9,000. We're now seeing people with bills already coming in at $10,000, $17,000. Someone who has a $100 bill normally who lives in an apartment is now paying $2, so that's still twice as much as they'd normally pay. President Joe Biden signed an emergency disaster declaration on Sunday in response to the winter storm, offering federal assistance to supplement state and local response efforts. Now, this is how the United States Constitution has been ruined to some degree, where the federal government itself starts injecting its help into the state if it needs it, when all it was ever really supposed to do is protect the rights of the state, right? So this is where you're losing your Constitution, is because these snakes within the federal government. To me, the old Union from 200 years ago was kind of the start of all that. They claimed everyone would have their own rights, but slowly and slowly the Union has been controlling all of the states. And I find it weird. They make sure they add that Kamala is 56 years old. And I don't know why that is. Maybe because the other guys are so old. We need young blood in. Just ways to seed the mind of the public through propaganda in news. Moving on here. This is just simple COVID vaccine losses, right? So these vaccines, some of them have to be stored extra cold, and with the power outage, there was a mass effort to ramp up everybody getting their shots. Think what you will about that. We have a little bit of propaganda about religious organizations, of course, helping out as well. Some of the photos from people in Texas, water main broken, this poor bastard out here trying to find the drain to get the water to go down. I guess it's like that all over the place. There's lots of broken mains in people's houses and in the streets and everything else. It's a friggin' disaster area for sure. So, I mean, this is going to be getting worked on. Moving along here. CBC has to put in their parts, and now they're comparing Alberta to Texas. This is kind of sickening, the stuff that they say in this. The frigid Arctic air that gripped Alberta for much of the last 2 weeks has descended on the U.S. deep south, but unlike Alberta, Texas and its surrounding regions aren't designed for this type of weather. Of course, we are. We are twice as cold as they were, and things kept on ticking. Sure, the houses were cold. Some of them, people had their heat just floored, but you know, we didn't have anything crazy happen. Texas grid was forced to shut off pockets of power to millions of consumers around the state in an effort to ration available supply and avoid a catastrophic system-wide blackout, which is also where you're getting these super high bills for some people, right? Because they throttled everything. The supply and demand aspect was changed, and now all these people are getting massive bills. Is it all just being done to scare people into new energy, or, you know, who knows? So anyway, so what happened? Who's to blame, and what lessons can Alberta take from this event? What happened in Texas? Well, they give their version, but we've already kind of gone over. It's more or less the same thing. They're talking supply and demand, and something happened to one system, and it fucked it all up because of the way the power balances. They say it foreshadows the future of Alberta, that we skated through our recent cold snap with nary a suggestion of system emergency, as I said, because we're ready for it, and even colder temperatures than that. But our fuel delivery and power infrastructure is built for those type of extremes. However, it may be a far different story when we have to grapple with temperatures in the 30 and 40 degrees in the summer to come. I mean, we have 35 degrees in the summer. It doesn't hurt anything. It never has. If it went up another 5 degrees, I doubt that it would very much. Heat doesn't make things run like worse with that. The gas won't have any issue, and the electricity won't either. Electric power, the heat has to be pretty bad before it starts causing a backup and a circuit blow, basically, is what would happen. But anyhow, so anyway, they're trying to tie us to them, and fucking anti-oil. Both are historically based around fossil fuel generation, which recently growing shares of wind and solar. Both have limited electrical connections to their neighbors, leaving it largely up to themselves to manage their reliability. For Alberta, that's no problem. We'll cut you all off and still be just fine. So we don't have to worry about being connected to them. They have to worry about being connected to us. Anyway, and both operate uniquely in North America under what is called an energy-only market, paying competitive generators solely for the energy they produce. In our view, there are 3 key lessons Alberta and Texas itself can take away from the event. First is the need to have bigger interconnections with their respective neighbors. While California can supply up to half its demands from imports at times, Alberta maxes out at less than 10%. Texas is even less. That's because we are energy independent. All Texas would have to do is insulate their lines. They would be again too. That's all it would take. Anyway, bigger interconnections with the neighbors means the ability to lean on other regions in times of need and vice versa. Even as Texas runs out of power today, there's plenty of excess power around the continent, but no ability to get it there. So again, this goes into the Great Reset and their need and desire to have everybody hooked up to the same fucking world power grid. This will be a big corporate agenda and operative mission to create this system, and they have to have these emergencies in order to justify it. So anyway, second is the need to elicit more flexibility from the demand side. With prices reaching $10 per kilowatt when the typical price is 3 to 5 cents, there are undoubtedly many people who would choose to turn some portion of the demand off if they face those prices. So the problem is most consumers don't face these prices and thus have no incentive to do so. So they need to crank that price up. Again, they're even sort of letting you know that the incentive is going to have to come from a more brutal price. The way that's framed here by this smart aleck is an energy-only market doesn't work without a responsive demand side of the market. So the responsive demand is getting that price cranked up, which is part of your carbon tax, any emergency that could make your shit go out of control. Of course, you'll beg for the other solution, right? Because you don't want to see that fucking bill again. So smart meters, lots of them. Modernize our meters with open source bi-directional communication abilities to enable demand to respond during scarcity events. Funny. Open source, open society, bi-directional, oh God, so vernacular reminds me of all kinds of things that's going on right now I don't like. Anyway, Third is a stark reminder that grids built to meet their respective seasonal peaks need to be prepared for extreme weather at all times of the year. Now, we need to prepare our infrastructure for summer, not just winter peaks. I don't know what you're going to do. You don't need to cool anything. There's no need for it. The shit they're talking about doesn't make any fucking sense. Of course, they won't give you any examples because they can't. But if Alberta has some crazy shit happen this summer, I'm going back to this and referencing it. We shouldn't have anything happen if it's minus plus 40 or plus 50 even. Does the desert have any issues with that? Does the AC stop working in the house of sod when it gets plus 40 out? Of course it fucking doesn't, right? So anyway, the confluence of weaker wind, embattled natural gas, and a higher demand resulted in the system going beyond its ability to cope. When planning, we need to consider the interdependencies of all these connected pieces. Once again, let's put everything together and globalize energy, and then there will be one group of people controlling it from the top. Now, here's some funny, interesting stuff. This is an investor that I listen to, silver dealer, silver trader, named Chris from Arcadia Economics. He used to trade on Wall Street floor with his dad. He got out of that. Now he does silver trading. At any rate, we'll just clip through some of the footage he has. He was losing his mind about this. But the banks, I guess, are the only things that are left on in Texas where he is right now. Or this is a few days ago, but nonetheless. It's all lit up. The bank's on. The parking in the bank is on.
Ben doesn't seem to talk much more than your fucking CEO, Jamie Dimon. Jamie, what's your explanation? Why are these fucking lights on? Who's in there? I should call the police. I'm out of control. Who's in there? Mario?
Of course, it's middle of the morning. No one's at work. But he does show that the banks are all still on. Water's still running under JP Morgan, Chase Morgan Bank. There's warm water running out of the building. You can see the title. You can see the channel. If you want to go watch this, go ahead. I'm not going to take up everybody's time with this, but we'll move on here. We're getting some other things to think about. Now, I don't know if this stuff is true or not, but it's something to think about, right? So HAARP locations. We have one over here in the eastern United States, and some of the videos I'm going to show you connect to events that were happening then. And then there's two that are in Alaska, which is kind of, in a sense, maybe close to BC and Alberta in the forest range for how these things could transmit. One in Central America, the United States, and all various other ones around the world. But anyway, these are systems that are set up to study and work with the ionosphere of the planet. It's supposed to be monitoring and testing and various things. Some people think that you have the ability to control the weather through a HAARP system. It emits a super high vibration. If you alter the frequency and put enough power, can you change weather patterns? Possibly, right? I don't know. I haven't seen any smoking gun evidence, but I guess I could see how it could work. So anyway, this is an older video from 2013 in northern British Columbia where, like I say, you could potentially have one of these HAARP systems transmitting noise far enough for these cats to hear this.
Have a listen to this. So what are you hearing? Well, we don't really know. The strange sounds were heard across Terrace, BC early yesterday morning and lasted for about 10 minutes. Speculation about what caused it ranges from the aurora borealis to aliens, or it could just be a prank. But similar sounds have been recorded in other parts of BC and reported in other locations around the world.
So,
The strange sounds were heard across...
They don't mention HAARP once, so that's kind of interesting, even though it is right up in the zone. They do mention aurora borealis, which is something that can potentially be affected by vibrating the ionosphere. It could cause it to just move a little bit, right? Like dipping your finger in the water and the ripples running over it. It's going to cause a wave. And that's something we'll look at briefly too. So this is an article for that was released back in 2013, 7 years old. We'll watch this one really quick too. This has one piece of footage I was ultra looking for because I remember when it came out of a couple dudes working in the forest, and then they heard all these sounds too.
What is that strange noise?
Okay, so that's weird, right? Now look at this. 2016, they're using the same footage from 2013. So is this all just a giant psyop anyway? or they're just going to use the same fucking damn footage 3 years later and show you all this stuff.
Sounds like a trumpet, and it's so weird it's being called.
Sounds like a trumpet. Now, I'll just touch on that briefly right now, too. So there's a part in Revelations in the Bible that talks about these trumpets sounding from heaven when the time is near. Now, of course, take that for what you want. Scientific mind would say maybe it is HAARP or some other thing causing it. Biblical people will say that it's these trumpets from heaven. Maybe the trumpets from heaven in the dream or the prophecy was just this, and it wasn't actually that. I don't know. All kinds of things you can think. Everyone wants to believe what they want to believe, but interesting to look at that anyhow.
Called a real-life X-File. This video was shot in a Canadian forest. And this creepy high-pitched sound was recorded in Michigan.
In Michigan, right? So let's look at the map again. So Michigan, you could have this HAARP machine affecting people in Michigan and around there. And then these could be affecting these cats that are playing around in northern BC or whatever, right? So anyway.
This noise was heard in Finland.
Finland. Let's have a look on the map. Yes, there are HAARP machines located around Finland.
And now it's happening again across the river from Detroit and Windsor, Canada.
Let's show there's a
The
machine
mystery
over
is
there.
really freaking people out.
When it comes in really hard. It shakes windows, it rattles dishes, it makes pictures go crooked on the wall.
Sometimes it lasts for hours. Other times, just a few minutes.
Your deck starts shaking, your floor starts vibrating.
Some experts believe that the source of the ghostly noise could be this U.S. steel plant situated on a small island in the Detroit River.
Which makes no sense. A steel plant, big deal. So they're crushing ore and getting the iron out of it, making steel out of it. If steel plant doesn't have fucking pictures tilting and falling off the walls like Buddy said, then you can guarantee it ain't coming from this. So way to go, news. Way to confuse the public, you fucking propaganda wizards.
So while there may be a logical explanation here, the question remains, what about those other noises?
Now, I believe I covered this in one of my older shows, but I'll bring it up quickly. There was, and you can look this up, Corbett Report did a thing on it too, but using wolves out east this winter, or at least claiming there were roaming packs of wolves and that people need to stay inside so the wolves don't get them. And then the Canadian military was running around with megaphones blasting wolf noises into the air of them howling and stuff, and then monitoring the public and seeing how they behave to it. So it's almost like using the invisible enemy of the wolf that isn't real to control people, but showing some evidence of it. Kind of the same as COVID. Now, I mean, I believe I had the disease, so I think that was a real deal, but you know, we've done far too much for what it was, obviously, to kill our society off so they can introduce their new one that they want to come in with this Aquarian Age, Madame Blavatsky, the Lucius Trust, the Theosophical Society, all of this religious nonsense that started a little over 100 years ago that's now being put into society now through like New Age with crystals and all religions are one, God is one, all this blah, 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 blah bullshit, right? So anyhow, there's some interesting things to consider and think about, and I'm going to promote this dude a bit in case you haven't ever heard of him before, but Jason A's channel. This is some of the shit that I used to see this on over at my buddy's house like 6-7 years ago. I'd go over there, chill, we'd watch YouTube, and we'd see some of the videos I just showed you with the noises going on all over the place. His videos go back like 7 years, and you'll find all kinds of weather anomalies and dead animals washing up on shore and birds falling out of the sky. Oh, tons and tons of crazy stuff happening worldwide for sure, with no clear answer for it. Again, the biblical sorts will be giving you biblical reasons for it. Maybe those biblical reasons were predicted to happen, but not in the way that they think. Who knows? Strange stuff to think about. Maybe that stuff has always gone on, and we've never really been able to communicate it that well before that these things happen. I don't know. Hard to say, but interesting stuff. And these are some of the things I'll show too, that these HAARP systems can create supposedly patterns through the clouds with their vibrating the ionosphere, which again, like I say, I guess could happen. You know, dip and drag your finger through the water and watch the ripples that come from the pattern you made, right? So it's possible, you know, weird swirlies. I remember this stuff years ago. I never really got too far into it myself because, I mean, I don't know, it just didn't really interest me, I guess. Interested the hell out of other people, though. There's lots of stuff on it if you are more interested in it. If you want to go and find everything out about the HAARP system, you'll have conspiracies out the left, right, and center. So anyhow, we'll cut that off there. It's long enough. It's quite a few articles, quite a few interesting things all tied together, I feel anyhow. Hope I did a good job. Hope you liked it. Like, comment, subscribe. If you know anything I don't, put it in there. Not just for me, but for everyone who watches the vid. And I'm going to work up something for everyone to watch tonight too. One more video for the week. I just got to go figure out which one that is now. So anyhow, peace out. Hope you liked it. Talk to you soon. All right. Bye-bye.